How's it going? I'm Tim, and in life I like two things: storytelling and coffee, specifically films and cappuccinos, but whatever. So join me for a cup of coffee and let's talk. One thing that's fascinated me more and more in film is aspect ratios, or the length and the height of the frame that the story takes place in. That sounds hilarious to admit, but it's true. There's a seemingly endless amount of these shapes that films are shot in, some with deep links to the technical capabilities of cameras or the platform of consumption, and others not at all. But a filmmaker's choice of aspect ratio dramatically impacts our experience as a viewer, yet it's forgotten as fast as it's noticed. Now, I've probably made you hyper aware of this right now, but that's actually my goal, because normally we're not even thinking about this. I mean, it's straight up counterintuitive. For instance, what's the shape of the screen that you're watching this video on right now? Are you on your phone, computer, TV, watch? Please tell me I'm not on your watch. Each of these devices has a screen with different dimensions. And now thanks to smartphones, it's borderline how many different shapes are the norm. There's a seemingly limitless choice of aspect ratios. So if we can pick pretty much any shape, how do we choose one over the other? The history of aspect ratios actually reveals a lot about how they're used today. There are heaps of aspect ratios out there, so I'm only going to focus on the ones most commonly used. I'll keep it quick. Films made during the silent film era are in the 4:3 ratio. That's because films were created by stitching 35mm Eastman Kodak film, the standard at the time. A small strip was added on the side of the film in order to add sound, which resulted in a slight change to the shape of the film. CinemaScope was invented to save dying cinema ticket sales after the adoption of the home television, and they achieved this by compressing a wide shot using an anamorphic lens, which was then stretched out by a projector. Vistavision was created by rotating that standard 35mm film 90 degrees, allowing scenes to be shot on a larger area, which retained sharpness when projected at a larger scale. 2.2:1 was created by shooting on 70mm film, which itself was twice as wide as 35mm. IMAX uses the same trick as Vistavision, but by rotating 70mm film 90 degrees. 16:9 was decided as the new TV standard, as it was a compromise between 4:3 or TV and 2.35:1, which is cinema. Smartphones have turned things nearly upside down, or more like 90 degrees, with screens now at 9:16 due to the nature of app feeds. Now other apps like Facebook and YouTube are expanding their screen vocabulary in order to keep up. So how and why have filmmakers utilized specific aspect ratios to better articulate their stories? Basically, aspect ratios dictate the mise-en-scene, and composition of film, which all unite together to evoke a tone or mood in the audience. I'll show you a few of my favorite examples. Jurassic Park is shot in 1.85:1 widescreen, which is a taller aspect ratio than the cinematic 2.35:1. This was to really sell the giant stature of the dinosaurs. The Incredibles utilizes different aspect ratios briefly, with a short intro featuring interviews in 1.33:1. Again, this could be to articulate the time period, but you could also make the point that the square being smaller creates a more intimate first look into the characters and shows a stark contrast of perspectives from where the main story takes place 16 years later.
I think I just like the simple life, relax a little and raise a family.
I performed a public service. You act like that's a bad thing.
Settle down, are you kidding? I'm at the top of my game. This, our family, is what's happening now, Bob. And you are missing this.
Grand Budapest Hotel, one of the best examples on this list, utilizes 3 separate aspect ratios throughout the film. Aside from the fact that the Academy ratio works remarkably well with Wes Anderson's existing symmetrical style, he used different aspect ratios to make each time period feel visually distinct and to nod at the film etiquette of the time. It's also like we're zooming in with each layer of perspective. Marvel's Wandavision also utilizes aspect ratios in a similar way to Wes Anderson to further illustrate the generation of sitcoms it references, and uses 2.35:1 to differentiate the outside world's perspective of the hex. The Lighthouse also got a bit of attention for using an unusually square aspect ratio of 1.19:1. This really sells the film as a period piece, but also creates a sense of claustrophobia. In order for the characters to occupy the same frame, they have to be very close. And it also gives the Lighthouse a much taller and dominating feel, enhancing it as a looming presence over the two wikis. Zack Snyder's Justice League was shot in 4:3. This was mainly a response to many modern films shooting only action scenes in IMAX. Zack wanted to make a whole film like that, but IMAX cameras are heavy, impractical, and expensive, so he shot on 35mm square instead. Zack also preferred the composition of the square. As he puts it,
I really started just compositionally really falling in love with that concept, because superheroes as figures, they tend to be less horizontal. You know, maybe Superman when he's flying, but when he's standing, he's more vertical.
So we've explored how aspect ratios have continued to evolve and change since the beginning of film, and how filmmakers have used aspect ratios in creative ways to enhance the stories that they want to tell. See how your favorite filmmakers and storytellers utilize aspect ratios to enhance their stories, and ask yourself, why do you think they made that choice? Was it a narrative decision like Grand Budapest Hotel or The Incredibles or even Jurassic Park? Was it a production decision like Robert Eggers making Lighthouse a period piece? Or was it an experiential decision like Zack Snyder's Justice League wanting to fill an entire IMAX screen? And if you make your own content, think about what aspect ratio would best support or subvert the style of your video or the story you'd like to tell. Aspect ratios can be as powerful as any other filmmaking tool in enhancing a narrative. There isn't inherently a right answer to any of this, but having more choice is really powerful when you're making a film. If anything, I'd encourage anyone to get weird with it. Like, don't be such a square or rectangle. Heck, use a circle, who knows? The more creative decisions you're making, the better. But yeah, look, that's everything I wanted to say on aspect ratios, so I hope you enjoyed it and have another cup of coffee on me.